5 Live Formula One.
We started recording our review of the Las Vegas Grand Prix about 4 hours ago, but there has been a saga in Sin City. Max Verstappen took the win here in Las Vegas, and Lando Norris finished P2 and Oscar Piastri finished P4, just off the podium. But since then, there has been big news breaking in the Formula One paddock. Both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri have been disqualified from the Grand Prix. I'm joined by Harry Benjamin, our lead commentator, and Alice Powell to reflect on this evening's activities. We spent some time in the paddock waiting for a decision, Harry. It has taken a long time. It's now 10 to 2 in the morning here in Las Vegas, well past my bedtime. I don't know about you. But this is huge news, isn't it? A massive blow to the McLaren team, and in particular to these two drivers who are fighting for their first F1 titles.
Yes, I think you're joined by the shell of Harry Benjamin and Alice Powell for this one. Double disqualification then for Lando Norris and McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri. Technical infringement. So the skid blocks on both cars were found after the race to be less than the minimum depth required. So the skid block is basically mandated in the regulations to prevent the cars from running too low. The lower you run, the quicker you can go, gain an advantage that way. We've had this incident before, and it's been penalised. Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari back at the Chinese Grand Prix, and again with Hamilton with a Mercedes back in Austin a couple of years ago, and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari during the same race. So it's not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last time. I think George Russell as well last year in Belgium also befell the same repercussions. So it means that Max Verstappen gains 25 points in this Drivers' Championship battle, and Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri remain on the same amount of points that they came into this weekend. So things get rather tight as we head to Qatar now.
So, Alice, when we were hearing that Lando Norris was experiencing problems in the final parts of that Grand Prix, can you relate that to the plank wear?
No, I don't know if you can. Because then why did it not get relayed to Oscar? Because he was still trying to get past Antonelli. I think there was maybe something else with Lando Norris's car. The rumours at first, when we just started recording the podcast, were that Lando Norris didn't have enough to deliver for a fuel sample, which would have made total sense as to why his pace had dropped off. And then, of course, the rumours changed, and it was the plank on both cars. So maybe there was a fuel issue with Lando Norris. We don't know. We might find out. But not great for McLaren.
Is it something to do with this circuit as well? Because it's a street track, they're notoriously bumpy, curbs. Could that have played a part? Or is it just that McLaren were running it low I'm not saying to try and sort of cheat to get an advantage, but they were trying certain setups, and that was the best way to go for them. And this has led to, unfortunately, disqualifications.
Yeah, you push the rules, especially when it comes to the technical side. It also depends how you interpret it, but this one is black and white. If it's under 9 millimeters, then that is a disqualification. It's a technical infringement. Would it have gained them loads of time? It depends how much it had worn by, but if it was by very small margin, then probably not. But yeah, from the bumpiness of the track, from curbs, but then you could say, well, all other 18 cars were all okay. So, yeah, it just seems to be a mistake from McLaren as a whole. They were clearly trying to push it that bit too much, and maybe because they didn't do as many laps as they would have liked in free practice because of the red flags and interruptions. When it does rain, if it was rained in free practice, you would raise the car anyway. They would have been on wets, of course, for qualifying. The tread blocks, you don't have tread blocks on slicks. Your car would be slightly higher on wets. So, yeah, I think they just maybe pushed it a bit too far, took the risk, and it's turned out it's not paid off.
So McLaren tried to appeal this. They argued there were mitigating circumstances, very similar to what you're describing there, Alice. The fact that we noticed it during the race as well. They've said that McLaren noted there was additional and unexpected porpoising at this event. And plus, due to the limited opportunity to test due to the weather on day one, the shortened practice sessions, they felt that those were enough to give them extenuating circumstances. The FIA argued that, unfortunately, there is no provision for that in the regulations.
Which I agree, because all the other teams are in the same boat. Their sessions were affected.
Exactly, and they have said, in the big FIA statement that they've released, that they don't believe this was deliberate or anything to attempt or circumvent the regulations by McLaren. So these things happen in Formula One, and I think we've got to give a shout out to producer Joe at one point, who apparently was watching from outside of the commentary box, and in the final corner, the only two cars that were taking a bit of curb and sparking were the two McLarens.
And we did notice the porpoising. The onboards, especially on Oscar Piastri's car, he was really bumping up and down. And then when he went into the braking zone, the helmet went right down in the cockpit. It was pretty obvious. But porpoising's not something we've seen for a long time, really. It's something that's kind of gone out of fashion in F1. We used to talk about it all the time.
Yeah, we did. But, it could be the nature of this circuit, particularly with the speeds they're getting up to down the Las Vegas Strip. They're hitting over 200 miles an hour. The weather, of course, it can play a part as well. But, it's one driver that will probably be, smiling a lot, and that's going to be Max Verstappen, because it's massively brought him back into play in the championship.
Yeah, so Harry, come on then. Have you got your abacus out and worked out the points and the permutations?
Now, with my numerical dyslexia and it coming up to 2 a.m. in the morning, this is what I've got for you. So, Lando Norris, 390 points. Piastri and Verstappen now equal on 366 points. So, they are 24 points behind Lando Norris going into the Qatar weekend, which, of course, is a sprint weekend. So, if my maths is correct, I believe that Lando has to score at least 2 points more than both Piastri and Verstappen come the end of the Qatar weekend, and the title is his. But this has massively brought in Max Verstappen to play.
So let's go back to the beginning of the race, shall we? And focus on our race winner here in Vegas, Max Verstappen. Let's go back to the start, Harry, because Lando Norris was on pole. He got a good start, got away very well off the line, but then he moved across and was very aggressive towards Max Verstappen.
Yeah, really aggressive. Almost took everyone by surprise, I think. Cut across Max Verstappen to defend that position, because I think he knew that Verstappen, of all people, is going to try something down the inside into turn one. And it was bold from Lando Norris, and it didn't pay off, because he then missed his braking point, went off and deep into the runoff area, and you don't need to invite Max Verstappen twice to take the lead of the Grand Prix. And after the hairpin at turn one, Max Verstappen never really looked back and drove into the distance, managed his pace well when he needed to, and that's what ultimately got him the win.
Alice, there were so many unknowns going into this Grand Prix. We'd had limited running in the practice sessions. No one had done much long running on any of the tyres. And even Max Verstappen said ahead of the Grand Prix that he didn't really know what to do, and they were going to have to make decisions as they went along. So when he got into the lead, that must have been such a relief for him. But still, there was so much to manage.
Yeah, there's always a lot to manage, but I think he just got such a great start. And I feel like if you allow Max to lead the first lap of the race, you're in danger of not getting that back. And yeah, Red Bull, from looking at the practice sessions, people were still saying, well, their pace is still pretty good, even though no one really did any long runs. So that was going to be the big danger. If Max got in the lead, he could potentially have a good victory, and he certainly did that.
And by the end, obviously, Lando Norris was struggling with something which we assume now may have been linked to the penalty that they've been given, or the disqualification they've been given. But the gap was huge by the end. Max Verstappen taking the checkered flag with like 20 seconds advantage over the McLaren driver.
Yeah, well, we thought, he must have made a mistake, Lando Norris, or something of that. We didn't see anything, obviously, at the time, but the gap was around about 5-6 seconds at the end, and Lando Norris was told to go and get Max Verstappen, try and pick up the pace, and Verstappen was fed that note on the team radio by his engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, and Verstappen was just able to control the pace. He seems to have really unlocked the car this weekend, actually. He managed to get the tyres operating in the right window, managed to extend his gap during the race, pit, and then come out ahead as well of George Russell, who had obviously worked his way up into second after Lando Norris went deep at turn one. So had a small fight with George Russell, but it was never really on. It was just superb from Max Verstappen. And even though coming into this weekend he was still an outside bet for the championship, still in it. It just goes to show it really doesn't take much for things to suddenly tighten up in Formula One.
And never write the Dutchman off. When I spoke to him in the media pen, what feels now like an eternity ago, I asked him if the race had actually been easier than he was expecting. And this is what he had to say.
Well, it was better than expected for sure. I mean, I didn't think that we would have this kind of pace in the car. But we just seemed to keep the tires alive. Definitely a little bit better than others. And we just managed the stint, or both of them, quite well.
You're still mathematically in with a chance of winning this championship. What makes you think you can do it, and what makes you think you can't do it?
No, if you want to fight for that, we need a bit of luck. But at the same time, I also don't really think about it. I just want to get the best possible results till the end, and that's what we focus on.
That was Max Verstappen, your race winner here in Las Vegas. And I mean, this season, and it's a big if he goes on to take the title, where does this rank? Is this going to be one of his absolute best years in Formula One? Because the car has been so difficult for him over the last 10 months or so. But he is suddenly fighting back, and the team are right there with him, and it feels like they are really working together again.
I mean, if he does take the title at the end of the year, I think it will be one of the best seasons from Max Verstappen, purely because it hasn't been easy for him whatsoever. This is his 6th win of the season. It's low numbers for Max Verstappen when you think about it. And through the ups and downs that Red Bull have gone through, not only on track but off it operationally as well, hemorrhaging top-level staff and behind the scenes as well in the early part of the year, Red Bull almost looked like it was falling apart at one point. And then eventually the departure of Christian Horner after, the British Grand Prix weekend. Laurent Mecquier is coming in as team principal, steadying the ship, another appointee of a Formula One team that's come up through the engineering ranks of things, which I think sits really well with Max Verstappen and has been able to get more out of him and the team around him. Max Verstappen's own team has also changed around him. His number one mechanic is heading off to Audi next year. He's got other members of his close team that are moving to other teams. So he's going through a big period of change, but still he's able to drive constantly forward. And just when you think all of the chips are down, he finds something. There's probably one blemish on his report card to do with his own driving, which was the Spanish Grand Prix, where he effectively drove into George Russell out of frustration when he was letting Russell through towards the end of the race. But apart from that, it's been a pretty epic season from Max Verstappen. If it does culminate in a world championship, I think it's up there with one of his finest.
He's been brilliant at keeping his head, hasn't he, Alice? He's not thrown his toys out of the pram when all of those things that Harry's just mentioned were happening. And he's always asked by the media. They just can't stop asking him the same question. Are you thinking about the championship? And the answer is always, I'm taking it one step at a time. Someone said, can you do it? Well, it's 50-50. I either can or I can't. He's so pragmatic about it. And as a racing driver, it must be frustrating when you're asked all the time, but yet it's within your power to achieve something like that.
Yeah, I think that's why Max just starts to wind the media up a little bit, give the short answers or give some funny answers or give an answer that doesn't really make much sense. But no, I think he's honest and, he's got a 50-50 chance. And I agree, he's either going to win it or he's not going to win it. But I think for Max, he wants to win regardless. He's clearly taking it race by race. Tick, Vegas is done. on to the next, because at the end of the day, he can only control what he can control. He can't control what Oscar and Lando are doing. He can have an influence by beating them on track or putting them under pressure or whatever. But yeah, he will be taking it race by race, and it's going to be exciting.
It is, isn't it? I'm really getting excited now. I was a bit sad coming into this weekend. Well, excited and sad in equal measure, because it was going to be quite a pivotal moment, I think, this weekend in the championship. But I'm even more excited now that it feels like it's going to extend maybe even all the way to Abu Dhabi. Let's talk about then the big winners. I know Max Verstappen is the actual winner, but the big winners from this disqualification of both the McLaren drivers, it's Mercedes. And we came into this weekend with a lot of people saying they were the favourites, rightly or wrongly. They went so well here last year, with George Russell taking pole position and backing it up with the win, and Lewis Hamilton managing to make it from P10 up to P2 to make it a 1-2 for Mercedes. And people thought that form would just carry over into 2025. But the team were quite keen to play all of that down and say, look, we've worked on the car, we've tried to make it better at all circuits, and therefore Las Vegas might not be where we show our strengths again. But actually, now they're walking away with a P2 and a P3. And George Russell was struggling with his power steering again in the race. He'd already experienced that in qualifying. So big winners, especially when it comes to the Constructors' Championship as well, almost solidifying that P2 place for them.
Yeah, it certainly is. And actually, Antonelli, I know we're going to probably touch on him in a moment, but he's my driver of the day, because he pretty much did the entire race on one set of hard tyres. He boxed on at the end of lap 1 or lap 2 to take off the soft tyre and put on the hard. And by the end of it, okay, Lando was having problems. But just prior to that, when Lando was still in the 34s, he was quicker than him. He was holding up Oscar Piastri. Oscar then ended up dropping off the back of Antonelli on pure pace. But this is a big win for Mercedes, because it really helps them in the Constructors' Championship. Max Verstappen is dragging Red Bull along, keeping them in the fight. But Ferrari, they've had such a shocking weekend. It's been a strong finish for Mercedes.
Yeah, certainly. Cement second place in the Constructors. Not quite done yet, but goes a long way for them. It continues to be said, George Russell's having a brilliant season, and it's not going under the radar. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's noticing it. And it's sort of emphasised by the fact we had all those Max Verstappen talks about where he was going to go when the ship was crumbling around him at Red Bull. Was there a chance Toto Wolff could get him at Mercedes next year? And I really felt that I know it's Verstappen, but I really felt it was doing a disservice to George Russell, because he's been absolutely flying this year. It is statistically his best season in Formula One so far. All throughout his time as teammate to Lewis Hamilton, he steadily got quicker and quicker and started beating Lewis Hamilton pretty early on. And in the end, did beat the 7-time champ by the time they finished being teammates with each other. And at this weekend, qualifying at times, yes, he looked absolutely quick. Q3 was a bit messy for him. He's been struggling with some power steering issues over the course of the weekend. It's hard to call it a mistake during the race, because he actually pitted before the leaders to try and get the undercut, which worked for a couple of the guys further back in the field. And by the time Max Verstappen came in from the lead to pit, came out, Verstappen came back out into the lead, but what was the margin? About a second and a half or something ahead of George Russell, who then felt like he could sniff maybe the lead there from the Dutchman and had fresher tyres, so tried it. But he ultimately admits that was probably a mistake, used up a bit too much of his tyre, and that was really what cost him any kind of more pace throughout the rest of the Grand Prix. I feel like that's harsh, though, because that's when you've got to try it right. Alice is a prime racing driver, so...
Well, George Russell spoke to me a little bit about that in the media pen earlier on. No, don't worry. We'll hear what he had to say about it. But I started by asking him about that power steering issue, and I asked him how much that had cost him this evening.
Yeah, it was very challenging to drive, to be honest. Didn't make the race easy. It wasn't enjoyable. Obviously, the first couple of laps were great, and I made a great start. But then I saw the opportunity to attack Max after the pit stop, and I pushed really hard, and I damaged my tyre, and that was sort of a point of no return, and I wanted to pit because the tyre was gone. But it was a painful race to the end, and fortunate to hold on to the podium.
You've got to go for those moments, though. Surely you're a racing driver.
For sure. It's, if I manage to make the pass and you're in clear air, you can manage your tyres as you wish.
who knows, what you can achieve, and we all know when you're in that clear air, it makes a huge difference. So I went for it. It was a bit too close for comfort at the end, in all honesty, because I was like driving on ice. But the result was a good result.
Well done.
Thank you.
So that was George Russell, finished P3 on the road, but obviously promoted now to P2, and his teammate Kimi Antonelli finishing 5th, but promoted up to P3 to complete the podium. And Kimi Antonelli had a funny penalty applied. The stewards thought they could see him jumping the start. We had a look at the onboards during the race, and I think all of us were a bit sort of none the wiser as to why that penalty had been given. But Kimi Antonelli said he thought he may have rolled a tiny bit, but he didn't feel anything in the car. And it's how difficult is a race start? I mean, so many procedures to know and to understand to get the car off the line. But even in the lead up to those lights going out, there's a lot going on.
There is, but it did look so harsh on Antonelli because, again, it didn't look like he creeped, but there is a sensor that's placed right underneath, so it's in the tarmac, it's on the grid spot. And clearly he had maybe a very sensitive one. But yeah, it's hand clutch on Formula One cars, so a lot of the time they will have, they've got 2 clutches, they'll have hand clutches. One, depends how it's set up, but for example, you could have it so you release the first clutch, which brings it up to biting point, and then it's up to you then to control the next release. Don't say that. I don't know if that's the setup for Antonelli on his car, but yeah, maybe he was just a bit too eager with that clutch, or just didn't have enough brake pressure when he was properly preloading, and he crept forward. But we couldn't see
so
it.
many procedures. I got lost already. I'd be in reverse at that point.
Far too many. Do you remember last year, Saudi Arabia, where Lando Norris was there were replays that showed him slightly rolling at the start of the race, which, if it's anything like Kimi Antonelli, would have been a jump start. But his one didn't trigger the transponder for whatever reason. So there is clearly, not quite 100% bulletproof efficiency here, and he got away with it. I think he got a fine later on in the race, something else, but he didn't get any kind of penalty like Antonelli did with a 5-second time penalty applied, which even the team, we heard Pete Bonington on the radio, a bit bemused by it. So harsh, but if the transponder is activated, it is a bit of a sort of slam dunk. There's your penalty.
But from there on in, my goodness me, the defence he put up, holding off Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc, helping George Russell out as well, slightly protecting his teammate. It was amazing. We saw that defensive driving last time out in Sao Paulo. He's really turned a corner, hasn't he, Alice?
He has, and I was hugely impressed with him because of all those experienced drivers that he had around him. Okay, let's say George Russell, well, he had an issue with his power steering, but that didn't seem to be the biggest thing that was hampering him. It was him pushing to try and get Max Verstappen when Max came back out from doing his pit stop that he said destroyed the tyres. But yeah, for Antonelli, who at times just had a real struggle, he had a big dip in form, he's on the rise, and he had a great Brazilian Grand Prix, and I think this one was exceptional.
We're now starting to see the hype, I think, about Kimi Antonelli. Beat George Russell the last 2 races on the trot, and could have been on the podium today. Well, was on the podium in the end.
In another universe, there are pictures of that podium, I'm sure.
Obviously didn't finish on the podium initially at the checkered flag, but could have been fighting at the very front throughout the course of the Grand Prix if qualifying had gone better for him.
I'm looking forward to seeing some attacking driving from him now. We've seen the defensive side. I kind of want to see him take on Max Verstappen a bit like we saw Ollie Behrman do in Mexico. That would be cool to see Antonelli show us that side of his skills as well. So P5 on the road, as I said, but P3 now, that will be what goes down in the history books. So a double podium for the Mercedes team. Meanwhile, for Ferrari, it's been another tricky weekend for the team from Maranello. Charles Leclerc finished P6. Obviously, that becomes P4 now for him as well, benefiting from the disqualifications. And Lewis Hamilton gets bumped up from P10 on the road to P8. I don't really know where to start with Lewis Hamilton.
Start at the start, because that's quite positive.
Well, the start was great. I remember listening to...
He avoided the accident somehow,
yeah,
didn't
he managed to cruise past. So they were all collecting at the turn one like some Skittles. He just zoomed past in his Ferrari. But the race, he came into the media pen in a dejected frame of mind, shall we say. He wasn't happy because actually during the drivers' parade, he was saying that, if he went from 20th on the grid because he started dead last to 11th, that wouldn't be so cool. Obviously, 11th, most frustrating finishing place in Formula One. So I said to him, but finishing P10 would be good. And he was just like, no, this is not any consolation at all. So let's hear from him. I started by asking him that question. This was his answer.
Unfortunately not. No. Pretty... Either way, it's a terrible result. So there's no point, nothing positive to take from today.
Okay. How eager are you for this season to end and for 2026 to begin?
I'm eager for it to end. I'm looking forward to it ending, and I'm not looking forward to the next one.
You're not looking forward to the next race?
Next season.
Oh, the next season. You're not looking forward to it? Will
How
you be
bad
here?
this year is gone.
Yeah, but will you be here in 2026? Yeah.
Two questions.
Okay. That was Sir Lewis Hamilton speaking to me earlier on in the media pen. I am only allowed 2 questions for each driver. I was being cheeky, trying to get a third, just because I wasn't quite sure what he was alluding to. He's not looking forward to 2026 in the Ferrari. That's what they've all been saying they were now working towards, and it was almost the light at the end of the tunnel for him and the Ferrari team. I don't know. There's just this feeling that perhaps he won't be there next year. And he wasn't going to give me an answer. Fair. I'd had my 2 questions. But what do we reckon?
You used up your golden ticket on him earlier in the weekend when asking about the Ferrari
always got it.
chairman
Yeah, maybe
comments.
if it was someone else, you might have answered because you got him
He
at
wasn't
the
going to
start of
let
the
you have
weekend.
it again. I love the fact that he's well aware of the Formula One rules when it comes to the media pen.
When it comes to Rosanna.
When it comes to Rosanna Tennant, there are different rules. It's tough. I mean, being slow in qualifying yesterday, despite having, whatever day it was, he has shown pace across this weekend in the practice sessions. But qualifying was qualifying, and it ended up being the first Ferrari to start last since 2009.
It was
not
also
great.
a treacherous session. The rain was terrible. The circuit was
But
slippy.
you think that would be where Lewis Hamilton might come alive, because we know he's a bit of a rain master. He's had some epic drives over his entire career, and wet. And when it rains, it's the great leveler, isn't it? So it didn't work out. In the race, yeah, he had that electrifying start. Strategy didn't quite pan out. I think he got stuck in a bit of a DRS train at one point, and that he was very frustrated after the race on the team radio, because he was ahead of Kimi Antonelli at one point, and then suddenly to see Antonelli right up there and Hamilton nowhere near, he was bemused.
And he had contact with Alex Albon as well, didn't he?
Yes, which Albon did get a penalty for, by the way. It didn't really leave much of a mark on Hamilton, but Albon had a bit of front wing falling off his Williams. So yeah, messy weekend in total. But look, if things are really dire, and they sound it, but Lewis Hamilton can be like this sometimes when things aren't going his way. Let's be honest.
Just think back to Hungary. That was a very
he's an
dark
emotional
time.
guy, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. If 2026 is really going to be as bad as he thinks it is, then he's got to preempt that. There's got to be huge changes across the board. We've heard friction between him and his engineer over the course of the weekend. Over the course of the year, they're quick to downplay things like that because he's just gelling. That's just the way they talk to each other. It's all fine, but if you are having these little issues, you've got to sort them out now before this year is out. That's what this year is all about for Hamilton. It's embedding himself into that team and that culture. If he is seriously thinking this is going to carry over into 2026, then that is big, big problems.
Alice, how long do you give it as a driver? How long do you wait for
my
the
goodness.
wrongs to right?
Well, it depends what he wants to do, what his aim is. If he's
Well, he wants to win a world championship with Ferrari, doesn't he?
well,
So they've got to deliver a car next year. But right now, I wouldn't trust Ferrari to deliver me a world championship winning car.
Totally
And
agree.
he'll know about next year's car. So if he's not looking forward to it, that's based on almost fact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he says he breathes racing. He dreams about racing. Racing is his life, and it has obviously been since he was a child. But yeah, he doesn't seem as in love with it as he should be at the moment. Even though he said he loves it, but it's painful for him to be trailing his teammate and having these nightmares. He qualified last on the grid, nearly 4 seconds off the pace. It's just crazy.
It's not what you want to put yourself through, is it, after such a decorated career? But it wasn't legitimately inherent of what he could do in the qualifying session for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The conditions were abnormal, and there was a bit of a mix-up over the team radio again, sort of logistical issues. It just a sort of concoction of mess that conspired in him being last on the grid. But at the end of the day, if he loses the love for it completely, then he won't stick around for that much longer. That's for sure.
If you've lost the love for it, then that's when it's time to stop.
But he also has come out with comments not too long ago saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. They have been trying to build Ferrari for a fair while now.
Maranello
however,
might not be either.
But it's the same messaging time and time again out of Ferrari. You just got to look on the other side of the garage with the golden boy Charles Leclerc, who's been having a great season, but he must be getting pretty sick and tired of not being able to challenge for a world title. So
stick him in the second Red Bull seat.
Well, that's we could have a whole podcast, I think, on that. So something's not right at the moment, and only they know really what's going on. But if it is as dire as it is, they've got to make big sweeping changes.
I hope his answers this evening don't lead to more comments from the Ferrari chairman, John Elkann.
Oh gosh, well, we'll
we'll
wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, and of course we go racing very, very quickly again. So I'm sure Hamilton will turn over a new leaf in the next few days, and I'm sure we'll have an upbeat Lewis going into Qatar. Right, before we get to hero of the race, is there any other business you'd like to bring up? Any other standout performances that caught your eye?
Apart from Antonelli, who's my standout, not so much a standout was Bortoletto firing into turn one and taking, definitely Lance Stroll, hitting him into Gasly, spinning him around, causing carnage at turn one. Bit of crazy driving, but no, I would say
he needs a solid weekend, Gabriel Bortoletto, doesn't he? To see him into the winter break, to give him the confidence going forward into 2026. Harry, anyone stand out for you?
Standouts for me, Carlos Sainz couldn't quite get the podium, obviously, but good points for the Williams driver, and conversely, shame for Alex Albon, really, who ended up having a bit of a weekend to forget. Could have been another good points haul for both Williams drivers, but sort of highlighting how Sainz is really now sort of gelling with his new team.
Which is a bit ironic, isn't it? Given Carlos Sainz has managed to gel with his team, and of course he left the Ferrari seat.
He's still the last Ferrari winner.
I know. You said you heard him in the fan zone this weekend saying that he was pretty happy to have that stat against his name. Right, and then from standout to...
Well, I would say just actually one thing I forgot to mention was Dorian Pam won the F1 Academy Championship this weekend as they had their final race. A dramatic weekend, but Mercedes took the win with, Dorian Pam, a Mercedes back driver racing for Prem, and it was nice to see Charles Leclerc was down there, Antonelli, Russell, Toto, a lot of the Mercedes team were down there to cheer all the drivers on.
Yeah, really nice to crown a champion here in Las Vegas. We did it last year with Max Verstappen, and this year with Dorian Pam in F1 Academy. Right, heroes of the race then, please.
Antonelli.
Max Verstappen. You?
Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
I think it has to be.
Deservedly
Kimi Antonelli.
so.
Kimi Antonelli says just watch that start. That's what I'll say. No. He was absolutely fantastic with his defence. But yeah, Max Verstappen, absolutely brilliant. Kept his cool when Lando Norris was heading towards him, and off he went into the distance. Right, well, we'll do it all again in just a few days' time because the Qatar Grand Prix is next. It's a sprint race weekend, so even more exciting racing action for all of us to enjoy. Harry, Alice, it has been an absolute pleasure being here in Sin City with you and reviewing the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I think it's time we hit the hay. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.